Welcome back to Previously Prohibited. I'm Jenin Eunice here with my co-host Melissa Whitty. And today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to cover a lot of different topics since there have been many things happening in the news, and we haven't got to talk about all of them at length as we would like to. So we'll just give a few updates and our takes. But first, over to Melissa.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for your comments. I'm actually working through your comments. I got a couple of good things on the JFK video that we posted last night, talking about, and I will directly address the issues with George H.W. Bush's father's oil company in Cuba, because that is an interesting angle. I've explored it a little bit. It didn't lead exactly where I thought it would, but it is interesting the way that there's a very small clique of people who are tied in Cuba, in Havana, and how all of those people ended up being extremely powerful one way or another in ways that you wouldn't necessarily think. And so, yes, so I'm going to get to that. And yeah, if you could, please like and subscribe. We would certainly appreciate it. And yeah, how is your Sunday going?
Well, it's okay. The news is depressing as always. So I guess one of the biggest updates is that it looks like Trump and things are escalating between the Trump administration and Iran. So that the peacetime president has been telling Iran that if they don't accept a nuclear deal, all hell will break loose. A phrase he used in Gaza, which has sort of proven to be true. So That is pretty nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I saw that this morning. He was talking to, I think it was Kristen Welker on NBC News, and a direct quote from him was, even though she doesn't actually share the clip of him saying that, but the direct quote was, they must come to the table and find a nuke, and they must, hold on, let me give it to you. If Iran does not agree to a nuclear deal, there will be bombing, and it will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before. Which is, just a little bit, I feel like the chutzpah involved in that statement, because, again, Trump is the one who tore up the last nuclear deal that Iran made. And he had no good reason to tear it up, because Iran had been complying with the inspections from the IAEA, and they had passed with flying colors. And then all of a sudden, this was like October of 2017, Trump says, actually, I'm not going to accept this inspection guarantee, right? I'm not going to sign off on it because I still feel like they are violating it in spirit.
Yeah, wow. In spirit.
In spirit, yeah.
They're thinking thoughts.
Right. And so that's how that happened. And then they lobbied Congress, and eventually we just pulled out of it. And which, of course, when I say they, of course, it was the Israel lobby, but also the Saudi Arabia lobby, because at the time Saudi Arabia and Iran were enemies, and did not Saudi Arabia enjoyed the fact that Iran's oil was not allowed to be traded on the open market, because of course it guaranteed higher oil prices for Saudi Arabia. Now, flash forward a couple years from that, Saudi Arabia and Iran actually did kind of normalize. They had some peace deals that were worked out by China. This is when we were busy starting war in Ukraine. And so most Americans kind of missed that. And so Saudi Arabia is now taking a more neutral stance towards Iran. They don't want to get in the middle of it, and they don't want war in their backyard. I think that just nothing good comes from it for anybody. So now it's just the U.S. and Israel doing all the saber rattling, as opposed to, so again, this is not 2017, it's not 2018 anymore. The world has changed a whole lot. Power dynamics have changed a whole lot. And I personally don't even understand how the hell it is we could even manage to fight a war like this, because we've given all of our damn weapons to Ukraine and Israel,
I mean, at the very least, it would be financially disastrous, if not, in terms of loss of life, disastrous.
Of course, yeah. It, on a humanitarian scale, it is just unspeakable. I'm just saying, there are so many ways you could oppose this. You don't even have to care about the war crimes. You don't even have to care about the innocent people and the lives destroyed and ruined. You could literally still oppose this just from a purely, I don't know, kind of selfish, but America first, America only standpoint, in that we can't afford this war. We are $36 trillion in debt. You've been bombing the Houthis for 2 full weeks now, 2 straight weeks. Hasn't done anything.
No. And I mean, the Iraq and Afghanistan wars were hugely detrimental to us financially, and the next generations are going to have to pay that off forever. I mean, there is no reason for America to go to war with Iran. Zero. The only reason to go to war with Iran is because Benjamin Netanyahu wants us to. I don't think it even benefits Israel. Of course, in his like weird, crazy view of the world, it does. But every single thing Netanyahu has wanted to pass that does come to pass has been disastrous for everybody. I don't know why anybody would ever listen to this man anymore. Well, there are obviously reasons people are doing things that have nothing to do with thinking it's the best thing for the world. But this is a road I really, really hope we don't go down. And I feel like you have a better finger on the pulse of like the MAGA crowd. What are the people who thought they were voting for a peacetime president? How angry are they? They're
upset. One of my followers, our mutuals, he is probably the most devout Trump fan, Trump voter I have ever come across. I used to hate him, actually. We used to not get along. I don't know. Things changed. This is when I was like in the DeSantis fangirl. Mm-hmm. But I'll read you what he wrote on my post, because I actually thought it was quite interesting. He said, hold on, I'm sorry, guys. He said, we voted for Trump but got Biden. Here we go. We voted for Trump but got Biden and DeSantis, Haley, Harris, and Bush. Truly discouraging. Before Donald J. Trump came along in 2015, I had abandoned hope for this country. He rekindled it, but it seems that I was right to give up hope. I hope he changes course. And so I was kind of shocked to hear him, because I've never seen him, not one time, put Trump down.
Wow.
You
So, yeah. I mean, that echoes something. I went to a bar, I think, the night of the election, the presidential election, and the results still obviously weren't clear, because I think it was like 6 p.m. or something. And the bartender, I asked how he was feeling about things, and he said, well, it doesn't really matter, because AIPAC wins and America loses no matter what. This is definitely making me realize how right he was.
Yeah, I've been going through these JFK files like crazy. I've been reading, and I think something that like really stands out to me is, number one, how dumb our politicians are now. When you read the correspondence from the 60s, from the 50s and 60s, just how intelligent, the way that they spoke, the way that they talked, the letters and memorandums that they wrote, the way that they would address their committees, it was so intelligent, and the arguments that they made. But I was reading Senator Fulbright's articulations earlier. He was the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for about 20 years in the 50s and 60s, and he directly talked about our aid with Israel. He was adamantly opposed to it, but I thought he said something so smart. He, at one point in the and I think it was like a 67 hearing, he said, all of this aid that we give to Israel does nothing but incentivize them to create more war. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, because I've long thought that actually I think this aid does incentivize. It incentivizes them to kind of bolster Hamas, obviously, because if you've always got somebody shooting these homemade rockets over the fence at you, then you can always justify the Iron Dome, which has been billions of dollars. We send them $1.1 billion every single year just for Iron Dome missiles. But it also helps to justify the extra, the $4 billion that we send them each year for military. It's a little over $5 billion, and then of course all the other aid and whatnot. But so yeah, he saw it back then when we were just sending them $40 million a year.
Wow, yeah. I always wonder, what is Benjamin Netanyahu thinking? Like, why do you think it's a good strategy to just create hostility with all of your neighbors and make them all hate you? I'm like deeply confused. So I clearly understand why America is doing stuff that I think is bad for America, and that's because they're under the thumb of Israel. But why does Benjamin Netanyahu want to do this? Does he genuinely think that all of these countries' leaders are going to turn on Israel and kill them unless he strikes first? And why wouldn't you think that the best way is diplomacy, given that you're kind of a minority in the region?
Well, I think that they have the problem of, the Palestinian problem, quote unquote. They want all that land. They want the West Bank. They do not want Palestinians living there, period. Yeah. They do not. They want to expel them, right? And they know 100% that when they do that eventually, if or when they do that, it is going to cause strife with their neighbors, Jordan and Egypt, right? So I think they're just always on the offense as a deterrent. Because,
you think that's been Netanyahu's goal from day one, though? Because my take on him is he's pretty secular, but he's been trying to do this since he was in power in 1996, and that now he's under the pressure of these religious extremists in his coalition, but that he's not necessarily a religious extremist. He's just a genocidal maniac. But right. I never had the impression that he himself was that committed to the Greater Israel Project ideologically.
Well, so I don't think that him per se, like the Greater Israel Project, but I'm specifically just talking about the West Bank, right? Just the West Bank, just Gaza. And it's interesting. I was reading Kennedy Files again, reading about the Johnson Plan, which was a plan suggested by a UN man, I forget exactly what his name was, not Lyndon Johnson, somebody else. Anyways, during JFK, he brought this up, and this was supposed to be in exchange to try to bring peace to the Middle East, bring peace to the Palestinian cause. And in the Johnson Plan, the proposal from the Kennedy administration was that Ben-Gurion had to agree essentially to 100,000, allowing 100,000 Palestinians to return to their home, right? And Ben-Gurion said, no, hell no, we don't care what we have to do. That will never happen. And this is our land. This is the Jews' land. It is no one else's land. And so you're talking about vehement opposition. And basically he told Kennedy, and this was in 61, go F yourself. We will never agree to that. This is our land. And no, they can't have it back. And so, and that was pre-1967 when they took a ton more of the West Bank. So this is their plan. They believe it belongs to them and no one else. And I don't think it actually has anything to do with religion. I think the Greater Israel Project is probably, but just specifically talking about the outlines that we think of as Israel,
Right. Well, and then back to the U.S., there's a new development, which is that the administration has, as they promised, they said a couple months ago they were going to do this. They've been combing social media to find non-citizens, especially students here on visas, who say things that are anti-American or conflict with our national policy and international policy, I guess.
Well, it's not anti-American, anti-Israel.
Right. They're saying anti-American. They're conflating the terms. Of course, that's what they mean. Because actually you can be completely critical of America and the American government and be fine, but you can't be critical of Israel, as we all know. So, and they're telling them to self-deport because their visas have just been revoked without any kind of process. It's just completely crazy. And I tweeted earlier today, like, you know what? We don't deserve these people. Like, the idea that, I'm all for, like, curbing, we don't want illegal immigration here. We definitely don't want criminals here, all of that. But a lot of immigrants bring a lot to benefit this country. And this, like, deep hostility and racism towards immigrants, basically brown immigrants, it's really disturbing. And it's also, a lot of these people are like, some of the woman who was deported from Brown University was like a specialist, a kidney surgeon specialist.
Right.
All the patients that she was supposed to be operating on had their surgeries canceled. We benefit from a lot of these immigrants, especially people who are here with specialties on visas and, like H-1B visas, which are people who can do things that like you couldn't necessarily just easily hire an American to do. So I say that, they should take their money and their talent elsewhere if this is how we're going to treat them, frankly.
Right. Well, number one, it's absolute complete total bullshit because we have things, we have things that we stand for in this country. Number one, the first and foremost, the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, right? And that is a fundamental human right. It was given to us by God. The United States government did not give it to us. And I know I keep beating this drum, but I really don't think that you can pound it home enough. Okay. We are not sacrificing the founding principles of this country for a freaking shit-stained country 10,000 miles away. All right. I'm sorry. No, go F yourselves. It makes me so angry that I am expected to burn the Bill of Rights, right? Now I'm supposed to not acknowledge that these rights were gifted to me by God and not by the United States government. I'm supposed to pretend that, no, the government gets to decide whether you have these rights or not. No, he doesn't. They don't.
And as we've discussed before on this show, the First Amendment is clearly a restraint on government. It's not about the speaker's status. It says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. I just keep repeating that because it's such an obvious point, yet there's everybody on the other side of this issue keeps making these arguments like non-citizens don't have rights. But you know what? Say there was a robust body of Supreme Court case law saying that non-citizens, then the Constitution doesn't apply to non-citizens. We understand the framers only meant this to apply to American citizens. That's not true. It's the opposite. The Supreme Court has said most constitutional rights do apply to Americans. But say they said that, technically don't apply. Why would you want to live in a country where people are deported for their views, for just the things they say? Like, if you're committed to free speech on principle, why would you immediately want to leap? Well, that person's not a citizen, so we can deport them because they said something I didn't like. And then the extreme entitlement I've seen of people on Twitter saying things like, you're a guest in my country and you're saying something I don't like. Who the hell do you think you are? Like, first of all, there are a lot of us with a lot of American citizens with a lot of different views. And like, who do you think you are? Like, the level of narcissism it takes to think that you should be deciding based on your views who gets to stay in the country or who doesn't. I mean, I'm an American citizen. I have as much a right as anybody else to make those decisions. And I want the anti-Israel people in this country. So there.
Right. Yeah. No, I again agree. It's basically just about if you agree with them or not. Right.
Yeah.
Except, again, I don't call for, David Shai or, Shai David or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't call for him to be deported. And I won't, even though it is tempting, right? Because you see certain people, they'll say, well, no, I would apply these same things to Israeli immigrants that were here as well. And it's like, no, you wouldn't actually, because you don't. Show me the tweets. Yeah. Show me the times that you've advocated for these people who are Israeli citizens or European immigrants or whatnot. Show me where you have advocated for them to get sent back. The only one I can think of is Mike Cernovich. He's always saying to deport Jordan Peterson because he just hates Jordan Peterson, so whatever. But yeah, other than that, there's a lot of big names on the right that are actually immigrants and don't have, and are just here on visas. And it's been a little disappointing actually to see them so quiet. And I don't know, maybe it's because they're scared that they will get revoked. But then it's like, what the hell does that say about us? That now people have to watch. We are living in a country now where people have to watch what they say because their political opinions could upend their entire lives. Yes. What the... Yeah,
exactly. And there's this cruelty, this cruel streak. Well, they're not first of all, someone like Mahmoud Khalil is married to a U.S. citizen. It has a child who's about to be born. He has a family here. He's starting a life here. He's invested here with the promise that he's on the path to citizenship as a lawful permanent resident. Like, that this is not not a humane way to treat people. There's a real abject cruelty to it. And even someone here on a student visa, I don't want to be dismissive of them either. They've planned their lives around this. They've invested resources. They've invested time. They're going to have to replan their lives now and their career trajectories and studies. It's really cruel, and it's not.
And it's just because they want Israel to stop bombing babies.
Exactly. Okay? Exactly. It's completely insane. And I explicitly have not advocated for Shai Davide, who's here on a green card, I guess, the Israeli guy. I do think he should lose his job. He follows students around,
He's
videotaping them. Yeah, and then post. And I would say that about if there was a Palestinian or Arab or any kind of professor following 18-year-old students around, videotaping them, putting those on social media, and saying this person is pro-Israel. She's, like, that is such inappropriate behavior for a professor. And yes, I do hold professors to a different standard than students. They are adults. They're in a position of authority. And I mean, nevertheless, I don't think there have been any documented incidents of pro-Palestine students like chasing Jewish students around because they're Jewish and then posting stuff. Maybe that, who knows with students, I don't know. But I'm definitely more forgiving. Like, you are in your 40s or something, and this is how you're behaving, and you are in a position of authority. That is insane. There is no way I could ever imagine myself behaving that way with an 18-year-old. There's something deeply wrong with you. And even him, I would say, and he was actually put on leave from Columbia because his behavior was so egregious. He got away with it for a long time. I guarantee if this had been a Palestinian professor, there's no way that Columbia would have looked the other way for months. But they did. Eventually, it was so egregious, and there were so many students, they had to put him on leave. But still, I don't think that rises to the level of deportation. Whereas the people they're deporting here have not done anything close to that.
Yeah, we got a new case. Let me share. Oh, hold on. Oh, shoot. Give me 2 seconds, guys. So sorry. Because this one to me is pretty freaking egregious. So this guy is an Iranian.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, so he is an Iranian student. He's here. He's a PhD candidate, and he is at the oh, hold on. Sorry. Let's see. Sorry, guys.
Is he the one in Alabama?
Yes, that's the one I'm trying to find.
It's unclear he's even been involved in any kind of pro-Palestine stuff.
Well, no. So according to his immigration attorney, he has not been involved in any pro-Palestine. That he is the first subject that we know of to be targeted for specifically just for social media posts. So he didn't go to a protest. He didn't write an op-ed in the newspaper. He just made posts on social media. That's dystopian. That is freaking authoritarian bullshit. If you support that, you are my enemy as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
if you support...
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's all, I don't see a hard line. I mean, to me, your right to participate in pro-Palestine protests is as
right.
Similar to your right to post on social media or to write an op-ed. I see those as, I know some people have drawn lines like writing an op-ed is less, but yeah, I guess you can't even say that they were part of a crowd that was behaving badly.
Right, exactly. That's the whole thing. At least, there's a little bit of the people who say, well, if they were at the protest, because the protests got rowdy. I could see, obviously I disagree vehemently, but I could still kind of see people... I don't know, sleeping at night, thinking, well, they were part of the crowd. You lay down with dogs, you're going to have fleas kind of thing. But again, that's not what happened here. This is just a social media post. Yeah. That's asinine. That is straight up commie shit. And no. Lord help me. And it's what they do in the West Bank. It's what they do to Palestinians. It's what they do to Israelis who post on social media things that they don't like. And no, it is the hallmark of it's fascism actually.
Yeah. I mean, and all the conservatives who are complaining about the government's involvement in social media censorship and social media monitoring during COVID and the 2020 election era, where are they now? They're all for this. It's the hypocrisy is so insane. And I'm trying to think through the legality issues, which I haven't had enough time to think about, because it doesn't seem to me like it's not direct censorship, right? They're not telling them the social media companies to suppress the posts, but they're making it clear that people are suffering consequences for their social media posts, which has a severe chilling effect. So I think that is a First Amendment issue. Right. I have to give it a little bit more thought because, it's kind of new, but
yeah, this one reminds me so much of the trucker protest, right? I think that there's so many parallels between the Canadian trucker protests and the pro-Palestine protests, because the Canadian truckers, they were disruptive, right? They were incredibly obnoxious. They shut down entire city streets. I wholeheartedly supported them. Okay, like I did. I thought that what the Canadian government was doing was wrong, and I thought it was straight up just fascist bullshit. They took their money. They took their they arrested them. They blocked them from using banks. They have eliminated the ability of a lot of those people to use banks. And if you can't see, and again, these people were protesting an injustice in the same way as the Palestinian protesters, pro-Palestine protesters. And so if you supported the Canadian truckers and now you're like, well, no, nobody said you could block the walkways, the sidewalks, so that students can't get to class and they got to take the long way around. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Where the hell were you at when people had to, they couldn't freaking drive their cars? During the I'm sure you were cheering that on.
I know, it's the same people. Like I track these people on social media. I mean, not track. Like, I pay attention to their hypocrisy, is what I mean. And the same people, and also January 6th. Like the people who were cheering that on and saying, clearly understood the difference between an individual person's behavior and the behavior of other people at that protest, are now using the same kind of subterfuge. It's really shocking. There's something.
It's cognitive dissonance to a certain extent, but then it's not, right? And so the only thing that because cognitive doesn't even really explain just the sheer, the unabashed, shameless hypocrisy, right? And it's I think it goes back to that there are just so many Americans that really have this really weird, all empowering blind spot for Israel. It doesn't matter what it is. They will do whatever Israel tells them to do, or what they think is in the best interest of Israel. And that is concerning to me. It's very frustrating for me. And it pisses me off.
I think
really bad.
I do feel like there are fewer and fewer of those people as time goes on, though. And they're like, their desperation it reeks of desperation, They're like clearly losing, just clearly losing the war, even if they're winning some battles. And
you wouldn't have to go after people making social media posts if you had a strong. I don't even know, like, what do you think you're going to get from this? It's just going to make people hate you more, right?
Well, I think that's part of the purpose, is because it's so blatant, and now it's like people are like, okay, our First Amendment rights are being taken away for this foreign country. I think that's going to increase I think what will happen is there will be some actual anti-Semitic incidents, most likely not from like pro-Palestine people, but I would guess from like actual more like white supremacy people, and then they will use that as an excuse to keep the vicious cycle going. So that's, I think it's so in our face, it's so obvious, like RFK Jr.'s social media posts, which Brett Weinstein, I would recommend everyone watch his little monologue about it. It was really good. It's just weird. And anybody with half a brain can tell something very odd is going on. Why is the Secretary of HHS, who was supported by, his base because he promised to end vaccine mandates to deal with the toxins that are all around us, and we all know are poisoning us every day, the real health concerns that Americans have, and instead he's posting about and devoting HHS resources to fighting anti-Semitism, which he considers as deadly as the plagues we've had. It's actually ludicrous, and I think a lot of people who even are supportive of Israel are like, huh? Like, what is this? So it's just it's oddly in our face. Like, why would you do that? And it just strikes me as like an attempt to almost create anti-Semitism that can be used to continue to take our rights away.
I know Candace touched on this the other day. Candace she's had some drama over on Instagram with this House in Habit, who is so funny. She said something about this. I never even knew who this chick was. Apparently she does. She has like 1.3 million followers on Instagram, but My first time ever hearing of this woman, it's like Jessica Krause Rabbit or something like that, but her name, her Substack is House and Habit, is that she actually took my Matt Gaetz thread, copied it word for word, took some screenshots of my tweets, then put it out on her Substack behind a paywall, and it really pissed me off because there was no link to my thread. It was her just stealing it. I mean, she did she did give me credit, but at the same time, she stole it. She stole my work and then put it behind a paywall for herself. And so I wasn't a fan. Anyways, out of nowhere, this woman, and she's really in the MAGA or in the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again thing. And she starts attacking Candace Owens the other day, right? Candace Owens has actually been doing a series on Harvey Weinstein, which is fascinating. I actually knew all about the Harvey Weinstein and the problems with his criminal conviction because I listened to a podcast at the time of the trial. The trial was just, it was a kangaroo court, basically. And his conviction has been overturned because of the antics that were allowed in that court. And anyways, Candace has just been covering that. Well, this House and Habit chick decides to just start attacking her last week. It was very bizarre. It was out of nowhere. And what comes out, what you find out is that who is behind these attacks? Candace starts digging. Well, she gets leaks from people in these people's camps, and it's Olivia Nuzzi. And
Nuzzi, yeah.
Nuzzi, yeah. So she's the chick who was RFK's, paramour back during the fall with the sexting scandal. So this woman is actually teaming up with this House and Habit chick to go after Candace. Why? Right? This is. And you have to assume that this is kind of still linked to RFK because Olivia Nuzzi, it's so weird. Candace posted a picture. This chick's driving around LA with a foreign car from the UK, and her license plates are RFK, and then 66, and then she doesn't share the other numbers. That's weird, right? And the insinuation I think that Candace said was that RFK was essentially paid for her to move to Malibu. And so why are they going after Candace? What is this about? Well, obviously it has to do with the Israel lobby. And RFK, the more you kind of look at him, there's something very weird about his relationship with Rabbi Shmuley and his subservience and devotion to Israel, because he was, in fact, the anti-war candidate, right? And then October 7th happens, and all of a sudden, everybody's kind of expecting him to speak out, and then it turns out, no, he's this diehard psycho Zionist, and Israel can do no wrong. He, in fact, said that the Palestinians were the most spoiled people on the planet. He literally said that, And I started thinking about, his family and whatnot. And I was like, what's interesting is that RFK isn't afraid of the CIA. RFK isn't afraid of the military-industrial complex. He's not afraid of really anything other than apparently Israel, because it's the only entity, it's the only power structure in this entire world. He'll go after big pharma. He'll go after big oil. He'll go after all of it. He doesn't care. He was a lawyer, an environmental lawyer, and then he did the vaccine crusades, all of it, except Israel.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It was my impression, too, because I think he is a very smart guy. I think he's knowledgeable, and I think he's pretty intellectually honest. That was my impression of him. So I was surprised, and then I stopped supporting him after the things he said after October 7th. So I had some issues with him. I wasn't all in with him, but I was definitely. He was by far my top choice as a presidential candidate, and I was going to support him. I also, he positioned himself as this anti-censorship hero, and I actually helped. I worked in Congress briefly in the summer of 2023, and I on the weaponization of federal government subcommittee, and we organized a hearing that basically I had a contact with him, so I got him to come testify. and he was extremely compelling, and the way he spoke about censorship showed a deep understanding. And now he's using his office as HHS secretary to institute more censorship at universities under the guise of combating anti-Semitism, a pestilence and a plague. I mean, it's like laughable. And I know everyone thinks they're a good judge of human nature, and I'm not saying I'm like the best, but I think I have a decent sense of people. And like when I met him, I had like a good feeling. Like I thought he came across to me as an honest, decent, genuine person. So I really do think there's something going on.
Something much deeper. Yeah.
Yeah. Some kind of, I suspect it's some kind of sexual blackmail, and it probably has to do with, I'm assuming like an affair wouldn't be enough for him to completely give up all of his morals and do what he's doing. So I'm thinking it must be something worse than that. Like maybe an underage girl, maybe something really kinky.
I don't even think it's that. I think he's just scared they're going to off him.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, the way they did his uncle and his dad,
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it could be. It's just the bizarre, like,
because he was like a sexual deviant. I think he even went to like sex rehab or something like that.
He did, and he wrote a book about his sex addiction, I think. So,
right, yeah.
There's
he was
something
a
going on.
Heroin addict for a long time.
Yeah. I feel like he probably did something that was like, would shock enough people that he like really doesn't want it to come out. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's what you're saying. Maybe it's a combination of both. But
sometimes they get through. Maybe they got his kids and compromising things. I don't know. But there's definitely something there, right? Because again, this is a guy that I was just thinking about it the other day. I'm like, I've been thinking obviously a lot about the JFK files and whatnot. And it's very weird how he's not afraid of the CIA. He talks crap about the CIA all the time, right? In fact, when you go through the JFK files and you start, the biggest voices on all of the files, you'll notice that they actually have no problem. Oliver Stone, whatnot. He never once mentions Israel, but he goes after the CIA like it's no problem. He has no fear of them. They have no fear of the military-industrial complex. They have no fear of the Soviets or the Russians or anything. There's only one thing that they all refuse to talk about, and that they all get visibly uncomfortable anytime it gets brought up. And that should tell you a lot.
Yeah.
So... That's about it.
Yeah. Well, that was a nice rundown of all the sort of big current events. We have an exciting guest that we'll be interviewing tomorrow,
Super
Scott
excited.
Horton. So stay tuned for that, and of course we'll be talking about all the major topics.
Yes, and I got Jose Vega is going to come on.
Oh, great! That's excellent.
So
that's great.
He'll be fun to talk to. He's got balls of steel, man. I love it. He doesn't care. He will confront anyone. He is super awesome. Anti-war, and I love it. So
great.
Yeah.
So
he was a hero on the right when he was confronting folks over Ukraine, but not so much when he started confronting people about Israel, and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's not always. It's not just the right that are a bunch of hypocrites. Plenty on the left.
This country is rife with hypocrites. There is no shortage. But that's why we try to keep it real over here. So no hypocrisy on previously prohibited.
Or if we are being hypocrites, sometimes there's a handful of things where I'm like, well, look, I get it, but I don't know.
Well,
there's
none of us can be perfect.
Yeah, nobody.
We all have blind spots, but I'm open to it. If you let me know, I'll reconsider my views.
Right. If I think the juice is worth the squeeze, anyways, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to send Lindsey Graham to The Hague. I'm really willing to deport him without any kind of due process whatsoever, and I don't care about being a hypocrite on that. Nope. Sorry, Lindsey, you got to go.
Well, I disagree with you on that. I think everyone has to have due process. But there is enough on the record, like via his public statements and social media posts, I think.
Yeah.
I'm
tired of wasting time. Go.
Well, I think the point is you have to do it for everybody, but otherwise, people can end up with it where they don't deserve. But In any event, totally get that point of view. So we'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.